You also, let's not forget, as I put it to you when you came on the show so many years ago, walked out of the New York Times like what Daenerys Targaryen with the fires around you, setting the place ablaze. Like, you people are disgusting. You're biased. And one thing in particular you really don't like is Israel. You said that. And here we are. I mean, the proof is all around us daily. And I know you know that James Bennet, the guy who okayed the Tom Cotton editorial, has now dropped an enormous 17,000 word piece just excoriating the Times he was on the other side originally, so he was in the Times as a defender. Then he got the boot after he allowed Tom Cotton to say we need troops to contain the BLM George Floyd fallout. Now he's laying it all bare and he's backing up everything you said.
Yeah, it's a very, very long piece. It's on the cover of The Economist, just came out yesterday. It's really worth picking up the magazine or printing it out and reading it. It's not something that's it cannot be contained in a quick tweet. But really what he shows, and it's such a tragic story because this was a person, and this was my old boss, I should add, and a friend, hired me and Bret Stephens from the Wall Street Journal to the Times, was genuinely committed to bringing some measure of political and ideological diversity into the pages. It's really a story of ideological capture. It's a story of how trust can be destroyed in so short a time. And it's really, in the end, a story about cowardice. And in this case, the cowardice of the publisher of the New York Times and people who saw the way that the institution was being transformed, who disagreed with it in private, and yet who never had the courage to condemn it, to root it out. And now I think the piece would suggest it's sort of too late, because once you lose trust with the public and trust with the reader, once you've made the fact that, the paper is no longer about all the news that's fit to print, but all the news that fits the narrative, how do you recover from that? And it's, in addition, like so many stories of our moment, it's a story about scapegoating. I'm really happy that James in particular points out the way that a 25-year-old at the time editor, an extraordinary talent named Adam Rubenstein, who was one of several editors on that piece who had a hand in it, was hung out to dry by the New York Times, and how profoundly wrong that was, and the way that it ultimately drove him out as well. So it's an astonishing piece. There's two things that I think will shock, especially your viewers. One is a conversation that James relays in which another colleague suggests, not glibly, sincerely, that trigger warnings should be put in front of the op-ed pieces of conservatives and heterodox thinkers, as if trigger warnings would solve their problem. And the other thing is where he has a conversation with the publisher of the New York Times, A.G. Sulzberger, in which James is relaying the complaints of one of the few conservatives on staff, claiming what was so obviously true. And the thing that sort of really, really wore you down, and I say this again as someone who was conservative, with air quotes, in the context of the New York Times, but, you guys, you have a sense of where I stand in general. I'd say I've sort of always been a pretty down the line liberal centrist, I guess you could say. I don't even know what I am now, given how far things have moved. But James is relaying this to the publisher, this sort of like grind of the fact that if you have the right views, your piece sails into the paper. But if you don't have the right views, everything is caveated, edited, triple, quadruple the amount of times, and it makes you ultimately shy away from publishing anything that doesn't comport, because it's just such a grinding process. And the publisher of the New York Times says to James, you have to tell him that that's just the way it is here, that the double standard is the norm here, and he has to get used to it. And James talks about, of all the things that happened to him, especially in the 3 days before he was pushed out of the paper after publishing Tom Cotton, that's the only moment that he was actually felt shame about. For obvious reasons. It's an extraordinarily powerful piece. I am so thrilled that is now part of what I hope will be the historic record about in sort of the history of the most important newspaper in the country and how it was lost.
Yeah, it was lost, and he lays it bare. I mean, he goes on about, here's just one example. He talks about how a year into Trump's presidency, he published a slate of letters from Trump voters reflecting on the presidency. And his colleagues at the New York Times were so outraged, he got grilled by them at an internal town hall in which they demanded to know when he intended on publishing a page of full letters written by supporters of former President Barack Obama. Like, wait, why? We're trying to get a finger on the pulse of the Trump presidency and how the Trump voters are experiencing it. Why then do we need a full slate of letters about someone who's no longer president?
I mean, there are just so many powerful examples in here, but what that one speaks to is how the New York Times went from being a place that claimed to want to reflect the world as it actually is, right? Great journalism gives its readers information, even if that information is uncomfortable, about the world that they live in, so that they can make informed choices for their families, for their businesses, for their communities, and for their lives. And instead, and this was like the core part of the change, it came to be that actually showing the views of half of the country came to be seen as somehow endorsing them, platforming them. And if you want to know how it is that the New York Times sort of increasingly reflects the micro bubble of an elite group of Americans speaking to each other, rather than being the paper of record, that is how. And James Bennett's piece really, really will leave anyone who reads it walking away understanding how that happened. And, and the preconditions for allowing that, right? He talks about, A.G. Sulzberger recently wrote, the publisher, a very long piece in the Columbia Journalism Review, sort of about the importance of journalism, et cetera, et cetera. And he talks about all of these virtues that are important for journalists in America today. And James points out in his piece in The Economist that the virtue that is missing is maybe the most important virtue of all, and that is the virtue of courage. That's the virtue of courage. And, that is not just true of the New York Times. It's true of everywhere we're looking in American life. It's like this epidemic of cowardice. And, what it requires, especially of journalists, in a moment where to write about a topic can make you suspicious. What's required in that is not total fearlessness, because that's impossible, but courage in the face of fear. And that's what the New York Times and so many other institutions right now are missing.
And you just shrink your organization. When Roger was running Fox News, I was back then more, I would say center. I had some center left positions. I had some center right positions. And, I've said openly, I have voted for both Democrats and Republicans in my 8 presidential elections alive. And so I would come at some issues from the left, especially back then. He never said, don't do that. He said, it's good. Keep going. Like, surprise people. I'm fine with that. He understood it was to Fox's benefit to have these ideas fleshed out, to have challenges come from the left and the right, to not just go with Republican talking points all the time. And the Times, they're just too ideologically committed to those ideas to have them challenged in any way. The Republicans' ideas in and of themselves are considered harmful. And this is what Bennett writes. The Times' problem has metastasized from liberal bias to illiberal bias, from an inclination to favor one side of the national debate to an impulse to shut debate down altogether. That really is a worse sin than just ganging up on Republican ideas. To not allow them to be spoken or printed is a bigger sin. The Megyn Kelly Show is supported by Grand Canyon University. Founded in 1949, GCU is a private Christian university that's dedicated to delivering an affordable and transformative higher education. Their vibrant campus is located in beautiful Phoenix, Arizona. And according to niche.com, it's ranked a top 25 best campus in the country. As of June 2023, GCU is offering 330 academic programs with over 270 online, allowing you the freedom to earn your degree on your time from wherever you are. You can do it in your pajamas if you want. At GCU, your degree, whether it's a bachelor's, master's, or doctorate, integrates the free market system and a welcoming Christian worldview. Learn more about GCU's programs, competitive tuition rates, and scholarship offers too from your university counselor. They're part of the supportive graduation team that takes a personalized approach to helping you at GCU achieve your academic goals, walking alongside you every step of the way. Find your purpose at Grand Canyon University. Private, Christian, affordable. For more info or to enroll, visit gcu.edu. Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.